Join Sam's Club and get incredible savings every time you shop. Check out the wide selection of fresh seasonal fruits and vegetables picked at the peak of ripeness. Find delicious oven-fresh baked goods and tender hand-cut USDA choice beef. Plus, hurry into Sam's Club by July 12th and get free items when you join. Get a package of berry chicken salad, a large rotisserie chicken, and 8 gourmet cupcakes, all for free. Stop by today for this limited time offer. Join and save. Sam's Club. Life is better in the club. See club for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Say Oh, Brother Akbar.
Okay, Brother Cimarron.
Yes,
Am
ma'am.
I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. How are you tonight? This is all set.
All right. How are you?
Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for
great.
having me on.
Thank you so much for being a guest tonight. I've heard so much about you.
All right.
I cannot wait.
All right. Well,
to get started.
I pray that all goes well.
It will. It will. It will.
All right.
I guess we are waiting on Brother Akbar to join us.
Okay.
Tell me,
okay.
I guess you can start off by giving us a little bit of a background of what you do with the Marcus Garvey Institute. Am I correct?
Garvey Society. Marcus Garvey Society. Yeah, the Marcus Garvey Society, and what I did earlier today was I sent Brother Akbar a brochure, so hopefully he'll share that with you. The Marcus Garvey Society pretty much grew out of the UNIA ACL. We started a division as early as 2002, Division 459 in Durham, North Carolina. And by 2005, we decided to dissolve the division, and we founded what was called the African Diaspora Nationalist Society and Pan-African Cooperative Market. We felt as though that the name didn't quite necessarily capture what our true intent was, and that was to continue to promote Garveyism. And so we contacted the Garvey family and asked permission and their blessing to use, their father's name. And we were given that, and so we became the Marcus Garvey Society. Through our works and through our efforts, some of the things that, we've been doing in our community, we've been, feeding people in the community, giving free hot meals, free clothes, free groceries, going door-to-door campaigning, promoting the ideas of Mr. Garvey, instituted youth or juvenile division of our organization. And currently, the most current thing that we have now is a community center, which is a new community development center. And we're fortunate because we're located in a plaza that's owned and operated by our own people and who express the same interests as us as well. So, with that, those are, I guess you would say, some tidbit things of, what we have going on. Of course, there's far more that we intend on doing because we started back in September, and so we have a after school program. I don't know if they have it in the Philly area, but year round schools, and they call it track out. So the children are in school for 9 weeks, and then they're out for 3 weeks. And 3 weeks that they're out, we have those young people while their parents are at work and so forth. We have what's called Living Classroom, and the Living Classroom is where people are able to participate in the different activities from yoga, line dance, Afro-Brazilian samba, martial arts, just various programs that we offer. And then we also do a lecture series, and part of that lecture series is to, educate and provide information for, those in the community.
Oh, amazing.
So that's pretty much us in a nutshell.
What year did you start this particular chapter?
Well, with the Garvey Society, again, like I say, it came out of the ADNSPCM and the UNIA, but we just recently opened our doors in September. We I guess you would say in August, but we officially opened the doors in September.
Okay. Okay, so what When exactly? So you were in the UNIA for about how long, would you say? How many years? How long have you been on this?
Dating back to 2002, 2003. That was around the time that we received our charter to, organize people. And I think I had my membership before we actually received our charter. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Around 2002, 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
2003.
Yes. Yeah.
So what about what about Garvey inspired you to join the movement?
Oh, wow.
To join the UNIA. What exactly sparked your interest, I guess?
I guess, my earliest recollection, and I think like most people, first time I ever came in contact with any aspects of Garveyism was by way of the flag itself, the red, black, and green flag. And I wound up getting that as a young boy. I probably was about maybe 11, by way of a relative of mine who, in our community, I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut, and this relative of mine, she presented me with this Kwanzaa kit that she had. She had written a book about Kwanzaa and was promoting Kwanzaa in the community. And I saw the flag, and the flag was that standout thing. And because I knew it did represent who I was, but learning more about the flag, I wound up learning more about Mr. Garvey and his ideas and principles. And everything that I read related to what I was experiencing, what I was dealing with, and eventually, over time, I wanted to know more and more, beyond just photographs of the Legionnaires, the Black Cross nurses, the Motor Corps. I wanted to know, is this thing still around? Does it still exist? And, whenever you're on a quest, you wind up finding what you're actually looking for. And so it came by way of attending an African Liberation Day celebration in D.C., and I wound up meeting some members. The closest division at that time was in Richmond, Virginia, and I was living in Raleigh. And so I spoke with the local president, and he said, I'm fine with you joining our division. He said, but to be honest with you, I think it would be best if, you started your own division because of the distance between. It just wouldn't really make for a good situation. And so, I found, 6 others who were interested, and, of course, you have to have 7 in order to be a chartered, division, and we went from there.
Okay. Thank you for giving us a little bit of background on you. I always, when I talk to people, I like to get a little bit of background on what inspired them. Definitely, especially being a part of the movement and who exposed them. I always like to hear, who exposed them first. Everybody has a unique story.
Right. That's right.
I love to hear that. Definitely, when I first meet people, especially if they've been in the movement for some years.
Exactly.
Some people say a family member, or some people say, when they went to college.
Right.
Everybody has a unique story, definitely.
That's right. Yeah, and see, my wife, she comes out of a Garveyite family. Her great-grandparents were Garveyites, and her grandmother was raised as a Garveyite, and so she has that background. She has that experience.
Right.
The areas in which my family grew up in, I was never able to locate any divisions in those areas. My mother coming out of South Carolina, my father coming out of North Carolina. So, but her great grandparents came out of Union, South Carolina, so she had a direct, line to the Garvey movement.
Ah. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you didn't have any problems relating to her in that aspect at all?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
A lot of our people don't even really know who Garvey is or what he stood for.
No, at all. That's right.
They don't understand what black nationalism means and the responsibility that comes with it and the work that comes with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting because he had, such a great impact. I mean, anything in relation to nationalism, you can't go without, getting around or going over, Garveyism is there, but yet, he's one who, most people have absolutely no idea, infused the movement, in the 20th century.
Right. Okay, I think we have Brother Akbar joining us tonight.
All right. Okay.
Are you there, Brother Akbar?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Please,
sir.
Brother Akbar.
Loud and clear.
All right.
Okay, how y'all doing tonight?
Excellent.
I think because I had called in too early or Queen Erin was on my other conference line, I didn't think I can get through. I'm going to try to bring her back in and see what happens, okay? Give me a minute.
Right.
Y'all keep on talking, okay?
Indeed,
I'll be right back.
Indeed. Yeah. So how long has this radio program been going?
We just started 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks?
Okay.
Going on a month. We've done a couple shows. Still getting used to working the dashboard and the switchboard and calling in. And it's been an interesting experience. I've never done radio. It's my first time.
Okay. All right. Well, hey,
definitely.
this is excellent. This is definitely excellent. And of course, we always need more of it so that people can get the information.
Are y'all here?
Have to.
Yes.
Yes.
Can y'all hear us?
We're here.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm good. We're all here now. Yes, my brother. And I appreciate you coming in tonight. And my name is Brother Akbar. I'm known as the Truth Doctor online. And this is Empress Aaron on the other end. And we got some series of questions to ask you about the destruction of black nationalism, and the nationalistic ideology that was set forth by our ancestors before the civil rights movement came into play. The aspirations of black people to have their own land and their own, I'm talking about movements that was inside the borders of what we know as America now, and the movements going back to the motherland, and some of them going to Canada, Mexico, and throughout Central America and everything to escape the barbarism of the white American savages back in the day. So I want to ask you the first two questions, and then Queen Aaron's going to come up, and then we're going to ask you a series of two questions, each of us, and then you answer the questions and try to keep them, kind of like in brief so we can, make this nice. Yeah, to represent Garveyism and nationalism. Now, what we want to know is now, the UNIA and, other organizations that were in the past used to want to have their own land, control their own land, and they were thinking about building their own nations. Right. And why is it that when you hear people say that they're Garveyites today, or they're what's the name of that other group, the Republic of New Africa, or something like that? And I want to say, rest in peace to Chukwu Lumumba, who passed away And I do believe that there's some mysterious thing going on behind that because, Mississippi was one of the states that the Republic of New Africa wanted. And, he became mayor, and a man with that type of ideology and mindset, and I think his family is saying something mysterious is going on, so you can't trust too many of these Negro pedants that be around you, that, they're fighting harder for white supremacy than white people are fighting.
That's right.
Now, the nationalistic, we don't hear too many people talking about a nation of our own no more. They say they're nationalists. They say they're following nationalistic ideals. But we want to know what's going on inside your group and other groups about nation building. And you hear people say nation building time and all this. But you don't see anybody making any connections with anyone in Africa, Central America, anywhere, or even petitioning for some of these states here. So what's going on in the nationalistic community today?
Well, Brother Akbar, I'll be honest with you. I think that, most organizations don't necessarily have a criteria. Part of the criteria, I guess you would say, is, someone being able to wear a red, black, and green wristband, or, someone to say something in relation to, maybe Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X or so forth, and not being able to go beyond the depths of what black nationalism is, by definition, and I'm just giving you a definition that Marcus Garvey, supplied us with, and that was political power and control. His whole idea was the culmination of all efforts, must end in black independent nationalism on the continent of Africa. Now, a lot of people aren't talking about Africa, nor are they speaking about, a nation inside of a nation. So when we look at, I guess you would say, the exodusters in this country and those who were moving towards the West, Oklahoma wound up becoming, I guess you would say, a stronghold for black communities. But a lot of those black communities were devastated, by Europeans coming in and terrorizing those various communities. Of course, we looked at Tulsa, Oklahoma. We looked at Rosewood, even Mount Bayou, although you didn't necessarily see terrorist attacks on Mount Bayou like you saw others. But the fact that, you have these communities that they're thriving, they're doing well, but through politics, the politics of the land, caused what I call urban removal, but of course, they call it, urban renewal. We see it going on today, where we don't necessarily have a foothold or stronghold, rather, in our communities. And so now, we're being devastated by, Habitat for Humanity. I'm trying to think of what it is that they call it here, land trust, where our people are tricked into the whole idea, the concept that, they own a home as well as the land, but they only own the home. So when these universities, let's say like maybe a Temple or Duke University, decides that they want to expand and move out, they're able to get the land as well. So we're not able to create the type of communities that we need, solidly here, as well as speak about repatriating, to the continent as well. And as Bishop Henry McNeil Turner always stated, the highway between the continent and the diaspora.
So, before Garveyism, who was the number one black person in America that was teaching or advocating a nation of our own? Of course, some people say Booker T. Washington wasn't about, repatriation. Is that true?
Well, let me take the first part of the question first. I think when we speak about who was the primary person or the primary individual, I don't think we necessarily had a primary person, but I think it's the earliest we can go back is like maybe 1787 with Prince Hall. And Prince Hall went to the state assembly in Massachusetts indicating that, black people needed to be able to, repatriate and go back to Africa. Then, of course, you see Paul Cuffey, who's a part of the resettlement piece to these Africans who fought in the Revolutionary War, and having them be placed in Nova Scotia and as well as Sierra Leone. So there were multiple individuals who were talking about repatriation, who were talking about a colony in Africa, not staying here, but actually leaving this land and establishing a land in which that they could call their own on the continent of Africa. In terms of Booker T. Washington was a very interesting individual because although people look at Booker T as some would say a sellout in a sense, but if we look at our early Pan-Africanists, what we find is that many of them sought his assistance. When we look at a Marcus Garvey, who was corresponding with Booker T. Washington from Jamaica, when we look at Sylvester Williams, who, put forth the first Pan-African Conference in 1900, you look at his letters and, he's asking for Booker T. Washington's assistance, and he wants Booker T. Washington to be present. A lot of nationalists were seeking his advice. Although he never set foot on the continent of Africa, Booker T. Washington had students on the continent that were preparing others to bring forth this industrial education. So he's a very interesting figure because, he's not necessarily into the politics of, white folks, not necessarily, pushing the envelope like many others, but his whole idea is through an industrial education, you can gain control of an economy, and through that economy, you can then therefore control the politics of the land.
So, you're saying that Booker T. Washington had students that was in Africa showing the Africans how to become industrialists?
Right. We know that he has students in Togo. We know he has students in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and I believe it was maybe one other area in West Africa where he had students, teaching and developing the communities in those particular areas.
How about, of Joseph Love?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Some said that he influenced Garvey. Would you know about that?
Well, I would say not only did he influence Garvey, but he was Garvey's primary teacher when it came to the spoken word in terms of oratory. Mr. Garvey himself said that, if Mr. Love was still alive today, you wouldn't be coming after Mr. Garvey, you'd be going after Mr. Love. So he held Mr. Love in high regards.
So you would say that story about Garvey had got his oratory skills from a white preacher is a tale, or
a tall tale? I'd call it a tall tale.
Yeah, because that's what this guy that I believe is an agent named Robert Hill, the one who made Catch Me in the Whirlwinds. This guy sounds like an agent because they let them say a lot of things about Garvey, but they never tell the part that the sabotage and the stuff that they did to Garvey. But
you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because Miss Estelle James, who was a part of Look for Me in the Whirlwind, she said to me, now this is out of her own mouth, she said, had she known that they were going to do a butcher job of Mr. Garvey, she would have never participated in the documentary. And so when they get to splicing and cutting and editing, sometimes we don't know the full story of what was told. They'll leave out all the good stuff and then just give you all of this foolishness to say, they'll take a sound bite from you.
Mm-hmm. Because everybody, all these people that tried to erase Marcus Garvey,
that's right,
out of the history, you just can't do it. But most of the people that was around Garvey was erased, like Henrietta Vinton Davis. I mean, she was the first black woman to be on Broadway. She was erased.
That's right, international organizer for the organization.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Everybody that was around him, Madame Demeanor, Fortune, Thomas T. Fortune.
Right.
Why did they try to erase Garvey out of the history of black people? When you hear about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and they never go back to Garvey. That's where they started.
Right.
Like they was the first two that started something in America. You know what I'm saying? They even go back to Du Bois, but they don't go back to Garvey, who was right in the middle of Du Bois in this time, because he came after Du Bois, and he took a big leap and surpassed Du Bois, and Du Bois was at his neck. So why do you think that they're trying to erase this man out of history if he was such a buffoon and that he was such a bad businessman and all that stuff? Why would you say that? Why would you think?
Honestly, I think that J. Edgar Hoover had a well fine-tuned organization, under the Bureau of Investigation, of course now, the FBI, through COINTELPRO. Through COINTELPRO, what we find is that when J. Edgar Hoover when he was going after communists, this was the same program that was used to neutralize the Garvey movement, not clearly understanding what type of organization it was. This is what he pinned, on the Garvey movement, just as he did with, Malcolm X, who you raised up earlier, and Martin Luther King. I think that there's a picture where, Dr. King is sitting somewhere with some Christian organization of some sort, and, they produced a picture and say, Dr. King is sitting with, these communists. So it was always designed to, discredit the movement as well as the man. Now, in terms of us erasing a Marcus Garvey out of history, we have to look at those individuals who have been our writers, and why haven't they written, in a positive nature? Roy Otley has a book called A New World A-Coming, and this book was put out in the 40s. And so when you read the chapters that he has about Marcus Garvey, it's somewhat unfavorable. Although there's a lot of good information that's in the book, what you see is that this, they're beginning to churn the wheels of erasing him out of history. Now, these are members of our own race. Members of our own race. And so we see that that's what they do. It's a case of let's make sure that we keep this group silent, and let's deal with the literary scholars and the artists and the sculptors and the entertainers and the dancers and the athletes. And, of course, this is what our children are being fed.
Well, Marcus Garvey did say that people of his race was his worst enemies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He didn't say white supremacy.
That's right.
He said the people of our race, and it's a lot of gatekeepers out there. I mean, today, when you start talking about, we need our own nation, we need to plot our own destiny. What type of human being will want to leave their destiny in the hands of another people?
That's right.
I really can care less about them. I mean, who I mean, what type of mindset is that? I mean, how do y'all guys address that when y'all try to recruit people in your organization?
We, of course, we all, deal with the whole, illusion of inclusion. This probably goes as far back, prior to 1807 when, they banned slave ships. Prior to 1807, in terms of repatriation, the movement was real strong amongst us as African people. But by 1807, once they said that it was illegal to ship Africans, to this country and other parts of the world, many of us started to be lulled to sleep. And so now, today, when we look at it in the context of, with media, the illusion of inclusion. You take television, you see us as news anchors and, on the big screen and so forth, so we think that we're a part of this society. We even go as far as calling ourselves American before we even acknowledge that we're African. Some of us won't even say that we're African. So, when we recruit, we do it along the lines of where the people are, So if, explaining the sister earlier, some of the things that, we're noted for doing in the community, and that's, feeding people in the community, free hot meals, free groceries, free clothes, and, attempting to strike up a dialogue amongst those who are in our community, offering different programs such as after school, summer camp. You have to meet the people where they are, plus be able to cater to their needs. When you're able to cater to their needs, I think that you have a better situation in terms of being able to speak to the people, versus just, passing out propaganda, passing out literature, because oftentimes people just shut down. But when you have something to offer them, and it's something that's truly needed, or it's something that they think that they need, you have a better way of approaching them with what it is that you have, what it is that you offer, and who you are and what you stand for, without making any apology.
Well, right. Tell us your program and your location and where you are and where you could be found. Okay. So if anyone's listening to this broadcast in the future in your area, they can get in contact with you and help join in to help do something for the community.
Okay. The Marcus Garvey Society is located in Durham, North Carolina. We have a space called New Community Development Center, and New is spelled N-U, taken from Kemet, meaning nation. So the nation, or National Community Development Center. And we are located in Phoenix Plaza, 902 Old Fayetteville Street, which is also part of Old Black Hayti community. Most people know it as Black Wall Street, but prior to me even coming to this community, it was called Hayti after the Haitian Revolution, and people still call it Hayti, Hayti. I was telling Sister earlier, we're fortunate to be in this plaza because it's owned and operated by our own people, Brother Duasta and Sister Denise. And
wonderful.
They've been doing it for quite some time. In fact, the plaza that we're in has been standing for 25 years, and then right across from us they have another plaza, which I'll say has been there maybe about 10, maybe anywhere between 10 to 13 years. So, that's true economic development and true community development. But this is where we're located. We offer lecture series. We offer what we call living classrooms. These are classes where, people can, get fit, get in shape through martial arts, line dancing, yoga, Afro-Brazilian samba. We're in talks with a brother right now who does West African martial art, Egbe Ogun. And we offer an after-school program, summer camp, track out and track out is for children who go to school year-round. They're in school for 9 weeks. They're out for 3 weeks, so we have them for 3 weeks solid. Just a array of different things that we offer. We also do rentals for those who are in the community who need space. In fact, the Moore Science Temple, they lease from us. Just a whole bunch of stuff that we do, and this is a part of our Garvey ministry.
Is your school accredited by the state, or is it just something that's separate from the state?
Well, we're not a school. My wife and I, we used to own and operate a school some years ago, and Now Valley Children's School. My youngest child has special needs. When she was born, we had to make a critical decision as to whether we were going to maintain the school or close the school, to tend to her. So we closed the school, but currently now, we work within the after-school component, the after-school program, and this summer will be the first summer that, we'll operate the summer camp, and it's called SLAM, Science, Literacy, Art, and Math. And, of course, this is where, our young people learn about themselves. They learn about Garveyism. They learn, about their history as well as world history so that they know what type of world they live in.
Oh, wow. I have a good question for you, brother. Do you think that Black nationalism will reemerge within the 21st and the 22nd century coming up?
Oh, it's happening now. I honestly believe that, the rise is coming. I think what happened, and I know you all probably remember around this time, around 1995, in Milwaukee, you had brother's name, but he had the Black Panther militia, and I think he was alderman, and he was talking about setting the revolution off, and you just had different groups.
You talking about Aaron Michael? You talking about Aaron Michael?
Mike McGee. Mike McGee. And then, like you said, you had Aaron Michael down in Texas. The music that we were listening to, was very conscientious at that time. And, people were moving towards different organizations and groups. But right after the Million Man March, it seemed as if everything just went down. But at this point, I think that the tide is starting to rise, and more people are starting to become more politically savvy, more politically mature. At first, I didn't think that it was going to happen because now through the different means of media like YouTube and I think people are being forced and being pushed to actually do something now versus not doing anything at all but just talking.
And do you think that Obama will, and through his administration, does he instruct and accept Black nationalism in his administration? And if not, why is that so?
I think, I think he was the worst thing that could have happened for us. In terms of Black nationalism, I don't think he has a Black nationalist bone in him. I think when he was elected, more Black folks thought they were electing a Michelle Obama than a Barack Obama. I think they prided themselves more on her blackness than they did his. And so, with his face on it, and it goes back to the whole, illusion of inclusion, I think it kind of scatterbrained some of us for a minute, but now that we see that nothing is coming out of it, we know that we're, pretty much left to fend for ourselves.
So why do you think that he's not into, our black race, knowing that we all voted, and right now we are oppressed, and we need a lot of changes in our community. I mean, does he think that, well, right now this is his last term, but how would that affect us into the next presidency as well?
Yeah, well, I think he doesn't have a shared experience like we all, have had, coming up in our communities, dealing with the things that we've had to deal with. For the most part, we know what police brutality, looks like, up front. We know it, we feel it, we see it, we experience it, on a day-to-day basis, and I just don't think that he truly, comes from that experience or really, knows the full depths of, what it means to just really be black in America.
Wow.
Well, he was brought up by white people, so he
Right.
can't be but so black. His girlfriend in college was white, and they said that Michelle Obama was dating a white guy for these two before they met. Now I couldn't find. I was looking for it, but you can't really find much about her. You can't really find much about her. When it goes, Yeah, I mean, I've been looking for information about her past in college and all that stuff. You just can't. It's like they invented her or something.
Right. But see, more black people identify with her being from Southside Chicago, family from South Carolina, both parents black. So that's what most black, pledging Delta or whatever. So, that's what most people, I think, black folks identify with more so than, a Barack Obama. No black person can truly say, I really identify with that brother,
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they be saying. They be saying that at least he married a black woman. When people start saying he's not all black and stuff, and the black woman will say at least he married a black woman. But some people think that Barack Obama has set us back almost 50 to 100 years, his presidency. Because it's like no black activism, or you don't even hear anything if they censoring the news, right? You don't hear anything about any black groups anywhere doing anything. Every now and then you'll hear something about the Black Panther Party, new Black Panther Party, but they said that their leader, Malik Zulu Shabazz, who was already a lawyer, I mean, and to me, that's an oxymoron that you're talking about you're fighting the system, but you're into the law of the system. I mean, there's no difference between a lawyer and a law enforcement agent. They both belong in the system. So, what do you think about nationalistic groups like the Black Panthers walking around carrying empty guns? Some people say they ain't even got no bullets in them. What do you think about them like that? Reactionaries, in other words.
Yeah, I think that, and just in all honesty, it's a lack of political education. When you do the history behind, the militancy in this country, and we can go, we can go further back. In fact, we take Denmark Vesey's revolt, as an example. Here's a brother who, hits the lottery. Of all things, he hits the lottery. He's able to purchase his freedom, but of course he's not able to purchase his wife and his children's freedom. So as a result, he becomes frustrated. He's a part of the AME Church, the Hempstead Church down in Charleston, South Carolina. He's a well-traveled individual. He's been between the Caribbean as well as the States. He speaks a little French, speaks English. He tries to communicate with Dessalines down in Haiti, indicating that they need assistance and help in the Charleston area to overturn slavery. His revolt, of course, is thwarted by members of his own race. But of all of the people that were killed, only one person, or at least we know one person who escaped, and his name was Morris Brown, and he has a college in Atlanta named after him. This is the only institution in America named after a black man that tried to kill white folk. So when we go back and we research and we do the history of who these men and women were, what they stood for, and what they were willing to give up, then we can put a new Black Panther Party or any other type of organization group into perspective, because now we see what our role is in this movement. We know that it's not with the intent of going out and doing things just to be seen versus actually doing. To even bring it up, a little further. We can look at the, earlier you were speaking about the whole destruction of Black nationalism. Even though we talk about, a Du Bois versus Marcus Garvey, but one of the greatest debates in this country happened in 1843, upstate New York, between Frederick Douglass and Henry Highland Garnett. Henry Highland Garnett called on the masses of African people in the South to rise up against their masters and kill them. And, of course, Frederick Douglass, who believed in moral suasion, a follower of William Lloyd Garrison, challenged Garnett's appeal to the people and won by one vote. So this debate in relation to the destruction of Black nationalism, goes back further than the Garvey-Du Bois debate. And we see the seeds of it. So where you have one who believes in moral suasion and the other who believes in by any means necessary, that's the dividing line between the people. And those are the things that have always out in our community, and why we have not been able to, overthrow that attitude of inclusion. Now, if we want to speak about today, I'm sorry.
I think it's Queen Anna's turn.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So as far as these younger sisters, how can we teach our children more about Black nationalism? And regardless of the schools, how can we, in our own communities, in the inner cities, groups or after-school programs, to teach our children nationalism?
Well, again, like I say, and it's going to be different, in different areas. Although we have the Marcus Garvey Society and New Community Development Center, it's always a struggle. We have the after-school program, so our young people are able to learn that way. We have to have our Saturday academies. We have to have our rites of passage. One of the things that we just recently did, in fact, and when I say recently, I mean like yesterday, two of our young people, my daughter was one of them. She's 14 years of age. They sat down with a sister who, does fashion design. And so for the Youth Academy, for the sisters, they act as consultants so that they can design their own uniform. So now it's a case in which, it's not the elders or those of us who are saying, we want you all to look this particular way, but they're actually designing their own uniforms so that, they feel comfortable, they feel up to date, I guess you would say, and are willing and ready to do some work. So we have to involve them in the actual work so that way, once we age out, and when I say age out, I mean, make our transition, they'll be passing it down to the next generation of what they consider to be their idea of nationalism for their era.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. That truly is. Now, why do you see right now all in the media, the NAACP is crashing down. Were they national extremists, or was that just a front for the Jews to get ahead of the blacks and just use us as a front to get their nationalism in their state and country and origin?
Well, I think their whole idea is to be as relevant, stay relevant within the community, although, they're owned and operated by Europeans. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Through their image awards, through, their voter registration drives, through their Moral Mondays. That's the big thing that's down here in North Carolina, Moral Mondays, where they're wearing out their shoes and, wanting to go to the Capitol and all of that. NAACP is going to do what NAACP, does. But for us, those of us who are nationalists, who are diehard nationalists, we have to, come with our program, and we have to come strong and hard with it, and make no apology for what it is that we implement and do. We have to challenge. If you look at Garveyism at its apex, there were more divisions. There were more UNIA divisions, and I'm just speaking about the United States of America. There were more divisions in America than there were chapters of the NAACP. And we're talking We're talking 1920. The NAACP had no stronghold in this country. Had no stronghold. I mean, just Louisiana alone, 80 divisions. 80 divisions. And the NAACP could not boast that they even had half that many divisions in one state. So we eclipsed them in this country, but, with the incarceration, the deportation of Mr. Garvey, the depression, all of these things, mounted on our backs, the different, with World War II, what Marcus Garvey was able to do post-World War I, we could not do again with World War II. The Jew was able to come out of it. The Jew in World War I was kicked out of Russia. When they were kicked out of Russia, the Germans said, we'll take them because we need more allies. We need people to help fight for us. So they accepted the Jew. But World War II, the Germans were disgusted with the Jew like the Russian was. The only difference is they killed them in mass. And so by this time, the United Nations, the League of Nations, had already been established by Woodrow Wilson, and they helped them set up a land in Palestine. Whereas the African and the diaspora, when they went to the League of Nations, when Marcus Garvey went to the League of Nations and said, well, the so-called German territory in Africa that you want to, disseminate needs to go back to its rightful owners, it didn't happen.
Right.
So, when we look at the history, when we look at our people, when we look at time, and that's why I think that it was an excellent question in regards to, the new Black Panther Party, versus what was taking place during that, during the past. We don't speak about the black militias, the black militias in this country. You had the Hannibal Guards, you had the Addicts Guards. The ones that I love the most, that I hold dear to me, is the Tennessee Rifles. When white folks wanted to lynch Ida B. Wells in Tennessee, the Tennessee Rifles came together and with their weapons and ammunition and said, no one's going to lay a hand on this sister. And these people have been erased up. I'm sorry.
How about the Deacons for Defense?
Deacons for Defense, it was a beautiful thing, but again, they come out of the black militia. the black militia was a part of the National Guard of America. But they were given weapons, they were given ammunition, and they protected their community. They wore uniforms. So those who were part of Deacons of Defense are just descendants of those who came out of the black militia.
Wasn't the Deacon of Defense tied in with the NAACP?
Loosely. You had those who were a part of the NAACP, and then you had those who were not. They, came out of Korea, had fought in the Korean War, who, decided to remain independent. Now, of course, you had, Robert Williams out of Monroe, North Carolina, who was a part of the NAACP, who was, pretty much pushed out because, his whole idea was that, we have to defend ourselves. And if freedom riders are going to come through the South, they need to be protected. I had a professor years ago who told me about a story how they faced off. Robert Williams. The name of his organization was called the Black Guards, and they faced off with the Klan on top of the hill.
Well, some people, they talk about the shootout that happened with the Panthers and the shootouts, that happened with that brother Robert Williams. But how about some of the shootouts that happened with the UNIA earlier in the 1920s? I heard someone told me they had a lot of conflicts with the police trying to come in Liberty Halls and different things. What do you know about that?
One of the most noted shootouts occurred in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And, our people, as always, being orderly and doing what we do. The cops, showed up, in front of Liberty Hall, wanted to get into it with us. Someone shot out a light, and the Legionnaires kicked it into high gear and started letting loose. The Klan, they got on board the Black Star Line down in Florida. The men got to fighting with the Klan. From my understanding, even Miss Davis, Henrietta Vinton Davis, was involved in that scuffle. And of course, by this time, she had to have been, well into her 60s.
You said that the whites came on the Black Star Line?
Yes. This was in Florida. Yeah.
Now, I heard that the UNIA Legionnaires of Florida had a shootout with the Ku Klux Klan. I heard that they were larger. They had 700 members. Is that true?
I'm not sure in terms of numbers, but of course, a lot of divisions, boasted large numbers. I think in Chicago they had like 4,200, members. Although Garvey was in New York, in Liberty Hall, in different parts of the country, you had more members in other parts of the country than he actually had there in New York.
Yeah, and people was talking about like when the civil rights movement, Du Bois and all the rest of the people who wanted to assimilate, right? Chandler and all the rest of them. So what happened was they're saying like when Garvey went and had a conference with the Ku Klux Klan that he was the worst man that there was. But some people said that after Garvey went and had a meeting with them, lynching had stopped. Is that true?
No. Of course.
I'm not saying that it stopped completely. I'm saying that it's slowed down.
Well, I think, and this is just my own opinion, I think it was, Mr. Garvey's Achilles heel. Him coming from the Caribbean and him coming out of Jamaica where there were more blacks than whites, and then country where there were more white folks than black folks. not truly understanding the nature of those who felt like the Klan was a terrorist organization and not one to sit down and negotiate with. I think that it kind of hurt him a bit. What we see is a lot of key personalities in the organization start to resent Mr. Garvey. Some even left the organization. James Eason is murdered down in New Orleans, who was the president of, black folks in America under the UNIA. He and the two men, both the same age, both come from maroon backgrounds. One from Jamaica, one from North Carolina. Both gifted with the word, with oratory. They're divided along those lines. So you see a big rift at that point.
Yeah, my brother. Some people say that James Eason was a better speaker than Garvey, and that Garvey was jealous of him and had him kicked out of the UNIA. What do you? Is that true or false?
I don't know if he was. I wouldn't say Mr. Garvey was jealous of Eason. I think he was more so hurt that after Eason was expelled from the organization, he finds his own organization, but instead of building a strong black nationalist organization, he decides to, discredit Garvey, speak ill of, Mr. Garvey. I think it hurt him more so than it was a thing of being jealous. Now, in terms of his oratory, in one part of Georgia, 10,000 people came out to hear the man speak, at a church. And wherever he went, members just popped up overnight. And, of course, this is why you probably had more members in the South than you had in the North. He was from the South. He was from North Carolina. He attended Livingstone College, which was an AME Zion school. And he was the top of his class when it came down to, speaking. I had the honor and pleasure of interviewing his great nephew, and just a lot of information. He compares it to Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad. The relationship that they had. The only. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they said that he was Malcolm X before Malcolm X. Like Malcolm X's whole life went almost exactly like this brother named Eason.
Well, what's interesting about that?
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about it is Malcolm X's father and mother were influenced by James Eason in Philadelphia to go to the Midwest and start branches of the UNIA in Milwaukee and Omaha, Nebraska. So James Eason had a great impact, a great influence on a lot of people when, if there was any type of shake-up or anything like that within the organization, he was sent out to, pretty much get divisions to make amends and do what it was that they were supposed to do. So, he was a great asset to the organization, but after his passing, after his death, quite a few members started leaving the organization. So, and of course we see that with the assassination of Malcolm X.
Yes. Yeah. And some people back then they had accused Marcus Garvey of having him killed. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I think it comes with the territory. Anytime you have a situation where you have someone within a group that's, charismatic and, something happens that they consider to be internal, they're always going to look at the leader, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the leader had anything to do with it. You have some zealots out here, and there were those who loved Marcus Garvey to the end of the earth. When we look at Miss Laura Kofi, who was a former member of the UNIA, and down in Florida, she loses her life to a Garveyite. Mr. Garvey is incarcerated at this time. Although he's incarcerated, they point the finger at Mr. Garvey. So it's just one of those things where when you're a part of something, when you're a part of a government, when you're a part of a society, a part of an organization, it definitely comes with the territory. Definitely comes with the territory when you're in a leadership role.
She was a crook anyway, but she said that she was an African princess or something, didn't she?
Right. The interesting thing about it is that if you really do your research and history on her, you don't find anything otherwise that shows that she was from the States. Some say that she came from Ghana into Canada and then made her way into the States, but there's nothing that I've been able to come up with to say that she was either born in the South or born in the North or or even born in Canada for that matter. So I'm not sure. And again, like I say, it boils down to when we talk about leadership. Sister had asked me earlier on, or she said to me, she likes to know, what made people, come into nationalism and so forth. And I'm one who I love to investigate. You have to hold certain suspicions about your leadership so that you know what their motivation may have been, why they have chosen to be out front and do what it is that they do. Do they really love the people? Do they want what you actually want? And how hard are they willing to go out and do it? And when we find out more and more about these people, we come to the realization that one or two things, either they were charlatans of the people or, they were workers or co-workers of the race.
Because in a lot of these documentaries, they try to make Garvey look like he was taken from the people. But then what I say to the people is, if he was taking anything, why did he buy 5 ships? If you're stealing, you're not going to go buy no 5 ships, or you're not going to invest in no factories and stores and laundries and all kinds of different things that they were into. You're not going to do that. So, let's because like when I was talking to the brother the other night on the other show, I was asking him, like, why is it not more pure grassroots Garvey, people that follow Marcus Garvey coming out to rebuke or to rebuke, or I'm looking for a word. I can't do it. About all this stuff they're saying about Garvey on YouTube and, rebuttal, Rebuttal is the word I'm looking for. I'm sorry, I lost my word. Why isn't it that it's enough people that claim that they're following Marcus Garvey coming out with their own YouTube videos and stuff to rebuttal all this stuff that's being said by these people that are being paid by UCLA and all these other colleges that have stolen or have received stolen documents that other members from the UNIA stole and sold over the years.
Right. It's a very good question. I know I attended, this sister was going for her doctorate, and, it was on, Marcus Garvey, and, the way she painted him was as if, he had absolutely no sense. If it were not for, Amy Ashwood and Amy Jace Garvey, he wouldn't have been able to stand on, his feet. And so, I challenged her. Now, of course, again, like I say, she's going for a doctorate. She's in front of a panel of those who are supposed to go over all of her documentation. But of course, these people are not Garvey scholars. Although your work is supposed to be cited and so forth, you have your academic scholar, and then you have your grassroots scholar. The grassroots scholar is one who is invested. The academic scholar isn't invested. They're just only invested in getting that doctorate. We're invested in getting liberation.
Well, one of the best books that I've ever read on Garvey was written by a white woman. It's called Grassroots Garveyism. How do you see that a white person is writing books that I've never, this book is really the book that I would tell anybody to read and find out about Garveyism in the South, because a lot of people think that Garveyism was just up in Harlem and New York, and there's not really much said about the South, but the South is the haven for nationalistic thought. Nationalism started in the South, not in the, you could go with Paul Cuffey being in Massachusetts where he was later on and saying that he was an early nationalistic guy. So, but the stronghold of nationalism somehow was transferred to the South and not the North, because the Northern Negroes had been pacified, by white abolitionists and the early whites back in the days, before, and I just want to know, what do you think about this Northern, nationalism compared to the Southern nationalists down there where you're living at? Because you lived in both places, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. To take the first part of your question in reference to why is it that you find white scholars who sometimes or oftentimes do a better job of writing about our people than our own people do. Part of it is because they believe what you believe. It's just that they believe in white supremacy. That's the number one reason. What they saw in Marcus Garvey, they see in themselves. And what I mean by that is, they see it as this man being determined, this man believing in conquest, but not to the extent in which he's willing to kill people or exterminate people with no reason. But they believe what he believes in, land of their own. And so this is why they can, indulge themselves in learning about Henry Highland Garnet. Henry Highland Garnet called, the white man the devil a century before Elijah Muhammad came in contact with calling white folks the devil. And we're talking 1834. White folks, they enjoy this aspect of our history. And they're willing to write, as much as they possibly can about it because they understand the nature of these people. We're the only people that say that Marcus Garvey was before his time. White people never say that. They just document his accomplishments and how well he was able to navigate through, these communities and bring about what he was able to achieve. And then the other part of your question about the North, versus the South, in terms of nationalism, we have it's an interesting dynamic because now what you see is a reverse, where you once had black people migrating up north, but now you have a lot of black northerners migrating south. And so you're getting an interesting blend of nationalistic ideas from what one takes from the north and brings to the south and what one brings from the south to the north. when you look at the makeup of New York and Garveyites, you see that these were not even first-generation born Northerners, but what you see is a generation of Southerners and black folks from the Caribbean that's helping to infuse this new idea of nationalism. And, of course, you have a mainstay. I don't know if you all have ever watched it in its entirety, but the hate that hate produced, there are more Garveyites in that documentary than members from the Nation of Islam who were speaking in that documentary. You have Pork Chop Davis, you have James Lawson, excuse me, there are a few other personalities who are in that documentary, and these are men who are from the South. You know, Marcus Garvey's personal bodyguard was from Georgia. So, you know, you have, it's an interesting dynamic when you look at how nationalism is flowing at this point, because, you know, if you were to come to Durham, you probably experience more people from, you know, the North and the West and the Midwest than, you know, just really meeting people whose families are from Durham, North Carolina. And, of course,
so
now you see that with Atlanta. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Empress.
So do you think that these religions now have separated us from or hindered us from having black nationalism, and also does it limit us from coming together and being unity within that black nationalism as well? Because a lot of religions have divided us. So my question is, how does that coincide with black nationalism if, you know, we have people scattered from Christians and Islamic and Judaism, and instead of coming together as one unit to create black unity and black nationalism? Is that hindering us in a big way with these religions?
Yeah, and that's interesting because, you know, if we look at formal black nationalism, what we find is that black nationalism was an outgrowth of the church. When you look at the black nationalist, the Baptist. It's on the tip of my tongue, but the National Baptist Convention, their slogan, you know, comes directly out of Psalm 68, and that's, you know, princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth her hands. They were very nationalistic in scope. They were a benevolent society. When you look at the African Methodist Episcopal Church, under Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, the church grew in leaps and bounds under his leadership because he was talking about black nationalism. He was one who, you know, would not sing the American anthem, would not do the Pledge of Allegiance, would speak ill of the flag. In fact, they went to Booker T. Washington to make Bishop McNeil Turner apologize. And Booker T. Washington said, "This is a grown man. I'd never tell him to apologize, especially, you know, for the things that my people have had to, you know, go through in this country." He traveled the breadth of Africa. There's pictures of him, you know, in South Africa, spreading the gospel. One who was mostly influenced by Bishop McNeil Turner was a brother by the name of Robert Charles, who carried his newspaper, Voices of Mission. Bishop McNeil Turner had an organization called the Migration Colonization Society, and through that particular society, they were trying to repatriate back over to Africa, back over to Liberia. This brother wound up in 1 week, shot 28 white folks and killed 8 police officers. So what we see with the black church through the formal aspect of black nationalism, it came out of this whole church experience. Now, in terms of, Islam and even our African traditional religions, and what we see with the black Hebrews, I don't necessarily think that it's divided us in the context of our spirituality, but I think that it has blocked us from the political, economic, and social ideas in which our forefathers and mothers believed in. And I think we can get back to it if we just do the history.
Okay, my brother, we're going to start letting some callers come in and ask you some questions. Sister, I said, let some of the callers in. Sister, I said, let me see. Okay. Go ahead and ask them some more questions, Aaron. Let me see what Sister I said is. I gotta email her real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a really good question I wanted to ask, because a lot of blacks in the urban areas are really, to me, they seem kind of separated and divided when it comes towards religion, because it seems like, a lot of the preachers are not really teaching how they did back in those days with the civil rights movement, and even before then with the Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, how to uplift one another in the community. It just seems all about greed for self and money. T.D. Jakes and all those, they just want to monopolize on religion instead of really
black empowerment,
captivating on black and black nationalism.
That's right. Yeah, as we get further away from our, I guess you would say, our nationalist tradition, the more of this is allowed. Now I guess the big thing now is this whole mega church thing. Having these mega churches, and the church now has a studio. The church now has, all of these things that really don't relate to the community in general. But again, like I say, the church was the benevolent society, especially like you're saying with the North. As an example of that, what you would find is those who were able to escape the South, when they were able to make it to places like a Philadelphia or New York, the church ensured that they had housing, that they were clothed, that they had food and employment, and also tried to ensure that slave catchers would not catch up with them. And so now we're far removed from that whole idea, because what's been ushered in, again, like I said, with this whole megachurch movement.
And the only person getting blessed in the big megachurch is the preacher.
That's right.
And that's what everybody giving them his money, and they giving him a hope and a dream, because, like you said, black nationalism started deep down south in the church, even with Nat Turner. The nationalistic idea of getting free and getting away and getting your own land and stuff. And and then it was co-opted by the NAACP, a mulatto movement that was adopted by the NAACP. And they used light-skinned people who used to be upheld over dark-skinned. Still are in some circles in America.
That's right.
The Boule, the Boule and the elites, they used to call them. But the nationalistic ideology that Marcus Garvey and people before him expounded, and today's NAACP, we've been living in the wake of them since the 1914. They were. What would you say now, looking at being here for the civil rights and the so-called integration movement, compared to what would have happened if we would have went the other way with the nationalistic movement? What do you think are where we will be at today? Because and where do you think we are at today, being that we did go the path of the integrators, the integrationists?
Indeed, and I mean it's a very interesting question because when we look at Liberia, Liberia through the American Colonization Society, founded by white supremacists, was founded just the same way America was founded. The indigenous people that lived there in Liberia were, pretty much just bulldozed off of the land, making way for, the African in America, to arrive and be there. And so this African from America has two fights on his hand. One, his own brother and sister, who's indigenous to the land, and then the threat of the European re-enslaving them. Daniel Coker, who was one of the founders, along with Richard Allen with the AME Church, is over in Liberia, and when he hears the threat of, that white folks are coming to re-enslave him, he's out back with his compatriots, and they're molding bullets, and an explosion takes place, and they wind up dying in the explosion because they were trying to, make bullets so that they could, kill off these white folks who they thought were coming to re-enslave them. So we don't necessarily know how it would have come into existence. Even now, what we see on the television with Ukraine. Ukraine gained this independence in 1991, and now Russia is going back into Ukraine. So we don't necessarily know if it would have been a utopia had Marcus Garvey achieved what he had set out to with, helping to build Liberia, or, if it would have been what we see now in Liberia. So, it's interesting.
Was it true that the UNIA has equipment over there that Garvey sent over there that's still rusting in the jungles today?
Now, this is what I've been told. I've never, visited Liberia and or even been in the interior to say that, those things are even still there. What I do know is that, through Firestone, they were able to, acquire land. They call it a lease, but I say they own the land. Anytime you're able to, suck the land dry of its natural resources, and, the people still live in squalor, that's a problem.
Yeah, well,
I had a good question. When Marcus Garvey was expanding his the UNIA to different countries like Liberia, a brother was explaining to me how in South America, in Brazil and in Belize, there are a lot of blacks that left from when slavery was abolished. Some went up north, and a lot went to the South America, which is Brazil and Belize and Chile. So you have a lot of blacks that migrated down that area. Does Garvey start any organizations down there? And do you think that if he would have had a greater chance with the UNIA if he started down in South America than Liberia, who kind of didn't accept him in Liberia, but would they have accepted him more in Brazil and Chile and Belize because they believed the same way how he believed?
Well, the thing about it is, all of these areas were still colonized. Even to this day, there's a certain form of colonization that still exists in those areas. Like if we look at, let's take, like you said, Belize, Panama, Jamaica, Barbados. I'm proud of Jamaica right now because they're calling for reparations. But when we look at these particular areas, although they seem or look independent, you look at the flags and, you see the gold, you see the black, you see the green. The reality is that they're commonwealths of Britain. So Britain still has a stronghold on these communities. Their money, although you might see Queen Mother Nanny and Marcus Garvey and many others on their currency, well, the money is produced over in Britain. So we're not in a complete state of independence. And during Garvey's time, none of these areas, none of these places could consider themselves to be independent. Not one nation. So the problems that he was having with Liberia, he still would have been dealing with in South America, Central America, and the Caribbean.
So if we tried to go to Liberia today to establish something with them, do you think that we had just as a hard time as Garvey had, or even harder?
I think with Liberia, I think it would be harder because you now have AFRICOM. Liberia was the first country to accept AFRICOM. Under a brother, who was supposed to be a general. So, he's a commander. He's there in Liberia with AFRICOM. So, I think Liberia would definitely be a hard place to, sell nationalism.
So the people didn't vote on it, or the president, Sir Leaf, didn't sign off on it. It was general.
She was very. If you go back and look at some of the old articles, and you can just pop her name in Google and put AFRICOM, and she was open, open to it.
Yeah. So
I think when we look at Mr. Garvey and what he was trying to develop, he was looking to develop a nation state of Africans from the diaspora and Africans from the continent, something that we could call our own, not a situation where we would amalgamate and be a part of, any society. It wasn't with the intent of being a Liberian. It wasn't with the intent of being Ghanaian. It wasn't with the intent of being Nigerian. When we look at Martin Delaney's treaty that was made up when he went to Nigeria, him and Robert Campbell, it was never with the intent of being Nigerian. It was to develop a colony of its own and to develop, a new line of politics and ideas and ways in which we could genuinely call it African, not to become Ifa, not to become a Khan, but something that was its own thing. And, of course, that's something that we still have to, move towards developing because, we're not a monolithic people. At the same token, we have a shared experience.
So you're saying that Garvey wasn't moving towards becoming like the indigenous Africans, but he wanted to unite with them? How could he really unite with them if he didn't share some of their religious and cultural type ideology, because seems like that's what happened. Let me finish. It seems like that's what happened in Liberia, being that the blacks there was indoctrinated into white Christianity, Judeo-Christianity, and they kind of like set up a caste system with the natives. And some of them forced the natives into slavery almost. I mean, they was chaining them and having them to build their castles and their big old southern houses. They even have a place over there called Mississippi in Africa. And, where they put the customs of Mississippi down there and, then they was fighting the indigenous Africans. Indigenous Africans was fighting them. How do you think that today, if we tried to go back to set up our own nation, like they did, if we tried, if it was a group, say 10,000 of us,
right?
What do you think? I mean, because if we can't go to Africa and we can't start a nation of our own here or in South America, anywhere on this God's green earth, is nationalism dead today, or is it just a figment of our imagination? How do you see this? If we're cut off at everything, you don't even hear people who say they follow Marcus Garvey even mentioning nationhood.
Right. I contend, that with as Mr. Garvey put it, all efforts must end in black independent nationalism on the continent of Africa. That being one idea, not with the intent of, because we're, not a monolithic people and we, share various views and ideas, of course, that's something that we're always going to have to deal with. But what Mr. Garvey was looking at was the whole idea of how is it that the Western world is able to produce different instruments of war, and we're unable to keep up. When you look at China, and of course, with China being the second largest world power, economic world power, when you look at India, prime example with India, September 2014, they intend on launching a space shuttle going to Mars. Africa should be that. Nanny Helen Burroughs said it the same way, in terms of no one having a monopoly, and that, if any race should be ahead, why can't it be African people? Why can't it be black people? And so that's the whole idea. It's not separating ourselves, but of course being all inclusive. Wilmot Blyden, who founded the Reform Dress Society, his whole thing was to cast away your Western attire and adopt wearing African clothing. Rid yourself of a Western name and adopt African names. Share in the customs, but at the same time, our whole idea must be on this one Africa.
Well, I see it as like the militant black movement was put down, and they accepted the cultural black movement, like Malana Karenga, gets out of jail of torturing and beating women and becomes the professor at UCLA. It's part of this scheme, because now you just got people walking around wearing African dashikis and clothes and gele and all this stuff, and they just talk a good African game, but it doesn't seem that their aspirations is to stay in Africa. Some of them have been to Africa numerous times. I mean, over 2,000-3,000 times.
That's right.
And they set up no business in Africa. They set up no relationship, really. I'm not saying all of them, but most of them. Don't set up no relationship with Africa in no type of way to bring resources or to be able to, deal with Africa. And why not And why is it that Africa doesn't see its long-lost children who's helping in many ways the white man to build this, when he would or build it. Some people even say on our backs, which I do believe because of slavery and all that stuff, they were able to build and get started and build their civilization. There's black people going to space with them. There's black people flying planes. There's black people engineers. Why doesn't Africa see that if it reached out its hand to the people over here, to come to Africa we will give you land, we will give you African riches and gold and diamonds and all that stuff. Is it that they can't do it because they don't really control Africa, or is it that Africa doesn't care enough to even bring back its educated black people to build it up? What do you think?
Well, I like the way, Mr. Garvey put it. He said, what would be bared upon us would be economic starvation. And through that starvation, what we find is that a lot of our people are economically forced out of the continent to come to places like, the UK and France and Spain, America, Canada. And because of that, we see more of them coming here than more of us going there. And then the depiction that we've been given, I was, and I think this was either last week or week before last, but I was, explaining in a lecture that I was given about, as a child, I remember, my father would always turn television off when it would come on, but, we would see the images of those in Ethiopia with, the children who were malnourished and their stomachs were protruding. And I was always trying to understand and get a better understanding of why their stomachs, would protrude. And then I learned later on that, because they were malnourished and they weren't getting any food or any proper nourishment, by not eating for long periods of time, their internal organs started to feed upon one another. And that's our community. That's the black community. Because we're malnourished, because we're economically starved, we start to feed on our own community. So we start to kill off ourselves until the body actually dies. And so what we have to do is find a better means, and I think it's nationalism, to reinvent ourselves, to restore ourselves, to get back to a healthy point in our lives. America is no more than just a wilted, salad with a whole bunch of dressing on it. But what people see is something, that's good. So, when you're from afar, whatever you see at a distance looks good to you versus those who are up close on it. So what we see here, we see as bad. We see as negative. But for those who are standing at a distance, they want some of this.
So you're saying that nationalism is alive and well today. And if it is, tell us, where can we find it?
Well, I'll say it's alive, but I won't say it's well. Nationalism is alive. One of the things that you spoke to, earlier on was that, we don't see it in the media where, certain things are happening or going on. And, of course, that's by, that's deliberate. When Dr. King, he admitted that, he wanted people to see 90 seconds of how black folks were treated in this country. White folks realize we got to stop, giving media coverage to this because we expose ourselves. So when a brother Akbar does something in Philadelphia, I'm not going to see it in Durham, North Carolina. Why? Because the media does not want me to see that. But what they want me to see are things that are negative and stereotypical so that, I can be in a certain place, stay in a certain place, and say, well, look how my people act, or look how we do.
Yeah, because when they put that Martin Luther King riot on TV, a riot started exploding all over the country. So they don't really show you a lot of things. They don't show you the war. When I was a young guy during the Vietnam War, they used to show the images of what was happening to the people over there, and they stopped showing them images.
That's right.
Because it worked against them. You know, the images worked against them. But it's like this nationalism. You know, black people not wanting to leave America because they don't know about America, and I'm even guilty myself of not traveling and different things, you know, because, you know, a lot of economics and stuff, especially now. But when I did have the economics before this economy went bad, I should have started traveling more. I traveled throughout the country, but outside the country, only been to Canada, you know, but I read books, and I'm very, outside the country through other people by reading books and reading different things and, studying and watching different programs. But black people have put their whole destiny in the hands of their oppressor. And they need to understand that they are playing a game of Russian roulette.
That's right.
Because as the white man goes, we goes. If he goes down, we go down.
That's right.
We don't have no other outlet or nothing else set up for our people, to go to or do anything, and they can't understand that we need to have some connection with some other ally. You know what I'm saying? If something happened to our people or the white go down or this system crash or they get tired of Negroes, you know what I'm saying? Because evidently they needed us. That's why they kept us and stopped the repatriation society and claimed Negroes didn't want to go back to Africa. There's still Negroes going back to Africa to this day. But, Roosevelt broke it down because they needed us for their wars, their factories, and all the dirty little work that they didn't want to do, that Negroes are still doing it, because Negroes has actually been assimilated into the white supremacy culture. And it works against us because we're working within it to oppress ourselves and other people of color.
That's right.
And you can't, just to get our people to understand this is like, it's like elementary. You are working within a system that destroys you and your kind.
That's right.
We have to come together to do something right here, even in every neighborhood almost across this nation. Immigrants have come, and they're opening up all the business and stores, the Asians, the Spanish, everybody. Even in some white neighborhoods, they're not even stores. The Asians got them stores too. And poor white neighborhoods. And even in some, it's like, what if black people can't see? These people are coming over here showing you how to survive through economics by having your own business and stuff. What does it matter with our people? What do you think is the matter with our people?
Yeah, it's it's a psychological game. It's definitely a psychological game. If Africa was strong, you'd see a stronger African people around the world. Where you see a strong China, you see strong Chinese in America. You see them in Canada. You see them in Africa. In Madagascar, they own up so much land until where it's really China. With the East Indians, you see a strong India, so therefore you see strong East Indians. You see them in the professions, in the different medical fields and so forth. Engineers, and so when you see a strong country, or if you see a strong continent, best believe you're going to see a strong people. And so this is why, through our efforts, here, let's be honest, nationalism comes by way of the diaspora more so than it comes out of the continent. That with our romanticism and our idea about, home sweet home, we develop, these ideas of Africa in our own mind. This is why, you remember when everyone was wearing the African medallions. They weren't wearing a country; they were wearing all of Africa. From Libya all the way down to South Africa. Because we embrace Africa in its totality. Not one aspect, but all of Africa.
And the Africans don't even do that. I mean, they really actually got with the African Union in recent times, and some people said that that's backed by the Europeans.
It's definitely a play off of the European Union, and then the headquarters, the Chinese, gave the AU, $22 million to build its headquarters. So, what is that about? Brazil recently erased $900 million worth of debt that Africa owed. They didn't erase all of it. I'm just saying they
sound like somebody's
erased
typing.
Billion. Typing?
If someone's typing on their phone, please stop, because we can hear it. Sorry, brother. Go ahead.
And so we know about the $900 million, but that's not all of the debt that was erased, that was wiped away. We know that the IMF, is draining the continent. We know that other agencies are involved in draining Africa, which Africa does not owe anyone anything.
So you would say that the European has subdued, between them and the Arab, has subdued the whole of Africa and have control. Because someone said that they were making Mugabe the head of the African Union. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I think it's being put to a vote. If I'm correct. Mugabe is nearly 90, if not 90 years of age already. He
looks good.
Yeah, he looks good, but what we'll probably see is another Chokwe Lumumba, unfortunately.
Because if he goes in there with the radical ideas of kicking out,
exactly.
Anytime
a man says, keep your pink noses out of our business, we already know, We know, we already know. We have an idea. So, before we, become excited or get excited prematurely, we know the realities of when you're a real African leader. And of course, I'm not saying that, Mugabe is, but what we do acknowledge is that, he has stated his position in relation to Europeans and their involvement in this country. And we have to respect him for that,
Yeah, he stood up. Even though he was trained and put in place by them, he stood up against them, and they've made him the number one terrorist in the world. He hasn't killed one single person. He just put down some uprisings in this country, and, just like America did here on Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, they kicked ass out there.
That's right. That's right.
So, during the civil rights movement, they kicked ass. So, that America can't point their finger at no other country talking about what they do. I mean, the police shoot a black man down head like they give him a bonus pay for killing a nigger.
Exactly.
It's like you killed a Negro, it's a $10,000 bonus in your pay this year. I mean, I would be surprised if they did that. But it's dangerous here for a black man. And black people don't want the Jews used us to march in them streets and march everything. They started the civil rights movement. They started the NAACP. They
yeah.
started, the Urban League and all these different places was funded and still funded by Jews, and they used you to march and to cry and all that. They was working behind the scenes to get their own country. I mean, Herzl and Rothschild and them petitioned to get their country. And like you was talking about the Holocaust, I'm a Holocaust denier all the way because there's no evidence of the Holocaust. I mean, when you go look at the evidence, there's no evidence. And plus, the Holocaust that I look at what the Jews stole was the Holocaust that happened in Namibia in Africa.
Right.
Where they were really riding in boxed cars and marched across the land and put into concentration camps and used and experimented. And they still have their heads that they severed off. And Germany still to this day, the people in Namibia. And that happened to them, and the Kaiser did that. When Hitler was a little boy. The Kaiser, that was the first concentration camp off the coast of Namibia. And they really did a lot of stuff to them people. And the same story about them people, the Jews took it and made up their Holocaust. Now, I'm not saying no Jews didn't get killed, but Hitler was a Jew himself.
That's right.
His mother was a Jew.
That's right.
So this thing about Hitler, and some people, and I do believe Hitler was never even killed. And he lived a long life. It's evidence that he lived a long life and made even art. They even had some art signs after his death. His name Hitler on it. He was like to draw and everything. So, then America went there and took all of their scientists and brought them over here. Russia had some, America had some, and they, they the ones who started the so-called space program. Because, I'm a moon denier, too. Because I don't know how they got past the Van Allen radiation belt myself.
Right.
When they tell me that, how they got past that 60-mile deep Van Allen radiation belt, and it's even more radiated because they've been blowing up nuclear bombs up in the air because they had to stop that. They were radiating. Yeah, they were radiating the atmosphere. These people are dangerous. Just like Dr. Kaboom said. Dr. Kaboom said until these people are put off the earth, this planet is going to stay in turmoil. Because this black people are walking around in America, and some in Africa too, everywhere on earth, as empty vessels serving white supremacy. And they don't think for themselves. They're not even thinking about building up their own civilization, even in some parts of Africa, because the corrupt leaders, they're not building, they're not giving back to the people. Even here in our country, the politicians that we send to Washington or send to, up into the capital of the states we live in, everything, they never do our bidding. And this, this country here, blacks had to start really thinking more closer on starting to unite with someone else that would love to unite with us. We have to create some new leadership because the leadership we have today. And one more thing, the UNIA. Let's talk about the UNIA. Now, your charter is through the UNIA Incorporated, right?
Well, we dissolved our charter, and of course, as you know, there's two entities. Both are recognized as UNIA ACL. There is one that has, both incorporated statuses. The 1918 and 1929, and then you have what's called of the world. Then you have what is the Rehabilitating Committee, which was made up of mostly members who had gone through the course of African philosophy under Marcus Garvey himself. I don't pit one against the other. They do what they do. We're the Marcus Garvey Society. We wish them well in all their endeavors. Mr. Garvey said that all members of the race are considered and classified general members of the association. And so, with that, I try to live my life as a member of the association without having to be recognized as incorporated or chartered or, we just try to do the work, through the Garvey Society to the best of our ability to, bring Garveyism, back to its proper place.
So why did you feel as though your organization had to dissolve and go it alone?
Well, we at that time, of course, being much younger, I was about maybe 28 years of age at the time when we decided to, dissolve the division. And there were things that we wanted to stretch out, and do. I think with all organizations, they get to a point where, how can I put it? They get to, I don't want to say where they have outlived their performance or what they could do for the community.
Usefulness?
Yeah, their usefulness. Exactly. I don't want to say that they've outlived their usefulness because we need a UNIA. But what we need is we need workers. We don't need fans. We need workers.
Now, do you think that the UNIA, because I've experienced it myself, I happen to be in the 1929 of the world, and I've experienced and I've seen it on the other side that they usually don't want the youth to come in. And, now Marcus Garvey was a very young man. He's the youngest UNIA president general that there ever has been. And he created it. So, now the president generals are old men and, old ideals and, it seems to me that these older people need to step out the way and let the younger people who in society is facing all the turmoils of today that most of these old ones are, they retired or whatever. There's no connection with the youth. What do you think that is? Well, and I think that drives a lot of the younger people out to go do their own thing.
Right. Leadership is flexible. In terms of, age, I think any leader that's flexible and will allow others to do the work is good leadership. But when you have leadership that, is stagnant, like you said earlier, unable to relate to the times, and just want to hold on to a title, then it becomes a situation where nothing is going to get done. With our organization, through the Marcus Garvey Society, we encourage our young people, at a very early age to do. This is why, and I don't know if you were on the line at the time when we were talking about with our youth academy. Our young people are designing their own uniforms, and we prefer that they design their We prefer that they design their own uniforms than the adults design their uniform because they know what's socially acceptable. In the community. They want to look good. They want to feel as if they're a part of something, and they want responsibility. So these are the things that we have to do.
I wanted to have a show talking about people to start developing Afrocentric nursery schools, like not nursery schools, like daycare centers and stuff like that.
Right.
When you send your child to the daycare center and they start right off in the daycare center learning about their Africanness and their blackness, along with ideology of building and going and building business and stuff. Because our people, this servitude mindset, it has to be destroyed.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to start at a very young age. As you know, a lot of our young people who are in school, they go through a lot, and I'm just talking about complexion. You have children still, thinking that there's something wrong with being black. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
In all my years, I've never seen a Chinese person speak ill of another Chinese person because of their complexion. I've never, in all my years, I've never even, I've never even heard a white person speak ill of another white person because of complexion. So we know that it exists amongst us. So of course we have to have something, as early as birth, so that, as our children grow, they take pride in who they are, and don't have these issues, these psychological issues.
Well, that goes back to being assimilated into the white supremacy culture. All you know is that they are winners because we're underneath. So all you want to do is you want to try to emulate these people. See, I can understand when I look at this thing from assimilation and social engineering and all this stuff. I can see where our people went wrong, and it's really an easy, remedy to get out of this, because Frederick Douglass, who, a lot of people shaky with him because he had a white woman, but that don't mean he couldn't have said nothing true. He said that it is easier to repair. They say it's easier to develop strong children. It's easier to develop strong children than it is to develop a broken man. Repair a broken man, rather.
That's right.
So, if we can get to these children, if we can put the ideals into our people's head that we should start Afrocentric, because a lot of the parents don't know our history, and a lot of people, they got problems reading and articulating and all that stuff. If we start daycare centers, Afrocentric daycare centers, and start drilling it in their head as soon as they can understand about their own culture and their own serving. We have to deprogram our people out of this mindset of serving.
Yeah, we this past weekend we had a program. Brother Kalanji Changa from the FTP movement came up from Atlanta and spoke, and we were also blessed with having the Fergusons, Brother Herman Ferguson and his wife, Sister Yalawa Ferguson. Brother Ferguson is 93 years of age now, co-founder of the organization of Afro-American Unity with, Malcolm X. And, my children, they were just like floored, just, glued, to Baba Herman Ferguson as he was speaking, because, it transformed from a lecture to a political education class. And they learned so much, from his experience, him, being involved in the OAAU, him, having to flee the country, him coming back and being a political prisoner and, working with political prisoners now and so forth. So, our children have to, it has to start from, again, like I say, from the infants all the way up to our elders. It has to be communal, and it has to be natural. Nothing that's forced, but natural.
Yes, my brother, you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now. Yep. Hello?
Yes,
okay.
I'm trying to look at, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to read the text and the sister, see how long we had left here. Look like we is extended over time. Let me see here.
Okay.
Okay. All right, because, a lot of people got to go to work tomorrow.
Oh, indeed, yeah. I got to catch a train tomorrow, so. Yeah.
So, hold on a minute. 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My brother.
All right.
We are getting ready to end this show because they're giving us 2. We way over time. So let's do this here. Reintroduce what you're doing down in North Carolina again, and now I'm gonna close this out.
All right. Well, this is Brother Cimarron Reed Bandele with the Marcus Garvey Society in Durham, North Carolina. We also have the new Community Development Center, which is located in Phoenix Square Plaza, 902 Old Fayetteville Street. Our organization is based off of the philosophy and ideas of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And for those who are interested in learning more about the Marcus Garvey Society, you can find us on Facebook, or you can email us at marcusgarveysociety@yahoo.com, all one word. And we definitely appreciate being on this show this evening because I believe that this is an institution in itself. So, again, Brother Akbar, and to the sisters, I definitely appreciate you all for having me on this evening.
Yes, and if anyone is interested in nationalism and you feel as though you need to join a nationalistic organization, find out and see if it's a UNIA or any other nationalistic organization in your neighborhood, because I, as one, feel that nationalism is our only hope, because I don't think that we can ever exist within a white supremacist society and get a fair shake. Because we haven't. It hasn't been happening. Our men are so many locked up in jail in the millions. And, our women are even being incarcerated now at a large rate. Our neighborhoods are being taken from us, and we are not sticking together as one of the biggest problems. Not sticking together, not having any type of unity or allegiance to our blackness or brotherhood or sisterhood or anything. Our people need to wake up and know that we are one, and we have to start thinking collectively. And I thank the brother for being here tonight, and I thank Sister Erin for being here, helping me with these questions. And I also thank my sister, Aset, for running the keyboard. And we're going to say good night to you and tune in to our next show. We got the 1 month, March the 1st, of natural hair. One natural hair month started March the 1st today. We're going to be broadcasting on Tuesday, and the sisters are going to be handling this so they can ask these other sisters all these juicy, good questions about how it feels to be natural and what is the difference of natural and unnatural. So I bid you good night, and we'll be black with you on Tuesday night. Peace and love.
All right. Appreciate you, Brother Akbar.
Yes, my brother. Good night to you.
All right. Have a good one.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Peace.